Good evening. Welcome to the evaluation workshop with a European champion. I'm so pleased to see so many of you on the screen. So to start the workshop, Mr. Yusuke Ohashi, the director of District 76, will welcome you. Please, Mr. Ohashi, could you please take the floor?
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening.
Good evening.
Hi. If you want to go from good to great, great to remarkable, one of the best way to learn from the edges. The edge, we have European champion John Zimmer today. Wow. Thank you very much for John for coming us. Well, like we can learn many angle from him. Well, he's in Europe, and the way they do evaluate, of course, it reflects on the cultural difference. So maybe you will have some findings or any differences that you see from District 76 Japanese perspective. You see this some diversity and some powerful feedback how to impress, to express. So speech evaluation is not just about the speech. Of course, we will try to give abundant feedback to the speakers in the aspect of how to contemplate and make a dynamic message, and how to engage with audience, and how to persuade with power and inspire audience. Of course, but in Toastmasters, the speech process, the speech development process, is not just about the speech, how we can make a great feedback to the speakers. We can make so many lists and so many improvements and here. Well, do you think that this kind of approach will impact the speakers? I don't think so. So good evaluation is based on trust and emotional impact and concrete actions that you like to recommend for further improvement. So, well, maybe you will watch the speech and, well, get in touch with the speakers, only 7-minute speech. However, the process, we can evolve, we can many rooms, suggestions, or encouragement, or inspiration that impact your speakers. So this is not about speech evaluation. So we can make a better way to engage with the speakers, engage with members, or engage with your friends, and how you can convince your recommendation effectively to your audience. So we can't put so many things. Well, we can narrow, we can prioritize, we can think about how we can deliver the message, how we can deliver the advice. So this is the key part, and trust and engagement and abundant feedback, that is quite crucial in Toastmasters. Well, this is not about just Toastmasters. In the way we evaluate is crucial, otherwise they don't accept. So ladies and gentlemen, now we have a champion, the edge, John Zimmer here. So we will learn from him, and we can make so many lists for takeaways and share with your club's members. Let's enjoy and join me welcoming our special guest, John Zimmer, with a big hand. The floor is yours. Over to you.
Domo arigato, Ohashi-san. Konbanwa minasan, watashi wa John Zimmer desu. Watashi wa Nihon ga suki desu. Dozo yoroshiku onegai shimasu. And please don't expect too much more Japanese from me. I'm doing my best. I'm delighted to be here. I was so happy when Yoshiko invited me to do this workshop, because evaluations are something that I think are very important. And in the workshop we have today, I want to share with you some ideas that you can start to use right away the very next time you give an evaluation. And I'm going to be showing some slides, and I just want everyone to know that at the end of the workshop, I will put the PDF of the slides in chat so that everybody can have a copy for you.
Hello, everyone. I am Yoshiko Kurisaki, the Global Liaison Manager. I'm so pleased to have John with us. Even if it's a virtual visit for our meeting, it has been my dream since I came back from Japan to invite John to guide us the good evaluation, the tips of evaluation. Joe and I were in the 10 Toastmasters Club in Geneva, and I had great respect to John. He is not only technically good, but he has insight to humanity, and that's a European flavor who understands the multicultural environment. So, with this note, I come back to some administrative point. Let me share the screen with you. The program today. The program is, after the opening, the program is divided into two parts. The part one of the program, the John is going to guide you, and then at the end, there will be the first target speech, which will be delivered in English by Kazumi Watanabe. And every one of you is going to evaluate her speech according to the criteria to be provided by John. So let's enjoy. And the speech today will be for 5 minutes. Then we are going to take a short break afterwards. After the break, we go into the part two, which is as exciting as part one. In the part two, we deliver the second target speech, which will be delivered in Japanese. Then you are going to evaluate the speech. The speech will be delivered by Masae Yamada. After the Japanese speech, we come back together in the main room, and then we spare some time for your own reflection. You are going to think about your takeaway, your learning. Then we spare some time for question and answer, and we close the workshop. So I shouldn't talk too long. I wish you enjoy the workshop today. It's yours, John.
Thank you very much, Yoshiko. And now I'm going to share my screen again. And everybody should see black screen. Is that right? Perfect. Before we talk about evaluations, and perhaps if your microphone is not on mute, maybe you could do that now so we're not bothered by background noise. That would be great. Thank you very much. I want to talk a little bit about public speaking. And I have a question that I'd be interested in hearing what people think. When it comes to public speaking, why do we want to become a better speaker? Why do you think people should practice public speaking? And in the chat, if you want to type 1 word or 2 words, you can type in English or Japanese as you like, but why should we practice our public speaking? I don't see anything yet. So maybe there's here we go. Convey a message, better leadership. We are all communicators. Yes. To connect, convey the message, persuade others, express my feelings clearly. Excellent. Deliver personally, be persuasive, to influence people. These are all great answers, and they're all true. To connect, convey a message, take advantage at workplace. Yes. Express my ideas, communicate. I completely agree. There are so many reasons why we should become a better speaker. I mean, it improves our confidence, not just in speaking, but in everything we do. It helps with our career. The people who can present ideas clearly and persuasively have opportunities open up for them. We want to share a message. Many of you have said that. Somebody see, I said, give power to our children. That's what a great thought. To tell my thoughts, build better relationships. Yes. And I also think to inspire and motivate other people. There are so many good reasons to become a better speaker. But now, why should we become good evaluators? Well, This man, Ralph Smedley, who founded Toastmasters back in 1924, he said this. He said, no club is fulfilling its obligation to its members unless it brings the maximum of training in the art of constructive criticism. And what did he mean? He said that for a club to fulfill its duty to its members, it has to teach them not just to speak, but also how to give feedback. And that's what we're going to be talking about today over the course of the next couple of hours. When we think of evaluations, the purpose of an evaluation, again, I think evaluations have two purposes, to educate and to motivate. Educate and motivate. Educate not only the speaker who is receiving all the feedback and they can grow as a speaker, learn from it, they can apply it, but also to educate the person evaluating. I do a lot of work nowadays with companies around the world and organizations and schools. And in my trainings, I always have people speak, and then I make sure everybody gives feedback. Why? Because it motivates the speaker, it gives the speaker good feedback. But what I have found, and I suspect many of you have found this also, is that when you evaluate somebody, when you listen to a speech to think about it critically, what is working well and what can we improve, it gets you thinking about your own speaking. And I found that for me, when I listen to a speech and think, what are they doing well? What would I improve? It helps me become a better speaker. So for me, these are the two key things when it comes to evaluations: education and motivation. So now, who can evaluate? Who can evaluate? And there's a very simple answer to this question. If you were in the audience listening to the speech, or if you were online listening to the speech virtually, you are qualified to evaluate. And often junior members of Toastmasters in our club and elsewhere, they tell me, I don't feel comfortable to evaluate because I don't have a lot of experience. It doesn't matter. You have an opinion. And I give you a good example of why this is so. I think most of us, maybe all of us, enjoy seeing movies from time to time. Have you ever gone to a movie and then discussed it afterwards with your friends? Did you like it? Did you not like it? Was the acting good? Was the acting bad? Was the surprise at the end good? Was the plot good? I don't think many of us, I don't think maybe any of us are professional film critics. However, we have an opinion because we saw the movie. And so if you've been in the audience, your opinion matters. We're the same as the opinion of anybody else. People may not agree with it or may not agree with everything, but that's okay. You are qualified to give feedback based on your opinion. That's the most important thing. And when it comes to evaluations, who benefits? What do you think? In chat, who benefits from evaluations? Just take a moment and just type in, who do you think benefits? Speaker, audience, both? All, both speaker and audience. All the speaker benefits, the evaluator benefits, and the club benefits. The speaker benefits because the speaker receives immediate feedback. They get immediate feedback that they can already start to think about. They get, I would hope, concrete suggestions. They get real ideas about what they can do to improve and what they can continue to do that is already working well. They get recognition. It's nice to be recognized. People make, I've seen lots of speeches over the years at Toastmasters. You have seen lots of speeches. You have probably given lots of speeches. You know how much work goes into preparing a speech. It's nice for people to recognize that. Even though we speak for the audience, it's nice when the audience recognizes the work that we do. And as I said before, the speaker gets motivation. The evaluator improves listening skills. You have to listen actively. And unfortunately, nowadays, people's listening skills, people's attention span is very, very short. We are all carrying around these things, which are always beeping or trying to get our attention. And there's email, and there's WeChat, and there's Instagram, and there's all kinds of things. And many times in a meeting, sometimes we listen, but we don't listen to understand. We listen to respond. And I know I have been guilty of this in the past. Somebody's talking to me, and I already start to think of what I'm going to say. And that's rude. When you are evaluating a speech, you must be fully present. You must be listening to the speaker. So it's a great way to improve your listening skills. It helps with your impromptu speaking skills. Impromptu means improvised, without much preparation. You listen to a speech, and sometimes you don't have a lot of time before you have to collect your thoughts and then give your evaluation. Many times in life, in business, at work, you get asked a question and you don't have a lot of time to prepare a response. Being able to respond quickly is a very important skill. Improve personal skills. And we'll talk a little bit about this in the second half, but this is important. How you give feedback can really lift a person up or push them down. So it helps with your personal skills when you're engaging with the person, with the speaker. And it also develops leadership skills, because as an evaluator, you are there to educate and motivate. You're like a guide. If this were Star Wars, you are like Yoda with the ears helping Luke Skywalker. You are guiding. You are the leader for the speaker. And it's a great skill to develop. And then for the club, high standards. The better the evaluations, it sets high standards for the club, creates a positive environment. It's great to hear a good evaluation. Everybody feels good. The speaker, the evaluator, everyone. Good evaluators can be role models for others in the club, and they can encourage them to become evaluators as well. And it usually results in stronger membership. When good, people want to join. That keeps the membership strong. That keeps the club. Now, in terms of style, in terms of what is the right evaluation style, well, I know that in the West, people talk a lot about the sandwich style. And what they mean is you start off with something that is good, and you finish with something that is good. That's the bread. And in the middle, you put the recommendations for improvement. That's fine, but I think it's important to be culturally sensitive and culturally aware. So I actually prefer the sushi style of evaluation. What do I mean? There are many things that you could talk about, but you don't want to talk about everything. You can't. You don't have much time. So you have to pick. I love the Japanese saying, harahachi-bu. Am I pronouncing that correctly? Harahachi-bu. Eat until you're 80% full. I talk about harahachi-bu, by the way, when I help people, when I help them design their slides. I say, the Japanese say harahachi-bu. So pick a few things. Think of the soy sauce as the really positive enhancement, but you also want just a little bit of wasabi to help them improve, to give them that little bit of a push, a little bit of an emphasis. Ultimately, it comes down to two things. Be honest and be positive. Be honest, be positive. Tell us what you think. If you liked something, it's important to let the person know. And if you genuinely think something is not working well, and I was the speaker, I would want you to tell me, because that's how I improve. I want your honest opinion. If there's something that you didn't like, that's okay. I want you to tell me. But of course, you want to do it in an encouraging, positive way. That is really the style for evaluating. Whether you use sandwich style, sushi style, cheese fondue in Switzerland style, it doesn't matter. Be honest and be positive. Now, when it comes to how one should evaluate, I want to share a couple of ideas that I think can make the evaluation more beneficial for both you as the evaluator and the speaker. First, know the speaker. And what I mean is, before the speaker speaks, try to get in touch with them. Try to speak to them by telephone or before the meeting. Have a small chat. Get to know the speaker and what the speech is about, and ask the speaker, is there anything you would like me to particularly pay attention to? And I think this is very important because speakers often have things that they want to work on. I am always trying to work on my speaking, and I know I have many friends in my Toastmasters club who are working on certain skills. And the speaker can tell you, I'd really appreciate it if you look out for this or for that. And that can be very helpful because it helps you focus on what you're going to say in your evaluation. Know the objective. Every speech, we are now shifting on to the pathways, we should be on the pathways track, I believe. There are the objectives for each speaking assignment. It's important that you know them beforehand so that you can keep them in mind when you give your feedback. Now, the manual. I say the manual. In the past, for those of you who have been members for many years, we had manual ways, everything is online, but it's an online manual. That is your chance to give written feedback to the speaker about the objectives of that particular speech. My advice is not to, when you give your verbal feedback in front of the whole club, don't read what you wrote on that written feedback form. My advice is just to give a verbal recommendation based on what you saw and what you felt and what you heard. Then for the manual, you can address the specific objectives that the manual has set out. And this way, the speaker gets two evaluations from you. They get the written one, which is tied to the objectives, and they get the verbal evaluation, which can go beyond the objectives, where you talk about things that you thought worked well and things that you thought could be improved. Very important is to adapt the evaluation to the speaker. What do I mean? Different speakers come to the club with levels of speaking ability, different levels of confidence, and it's very important to adapt the evaluation to the speaker. If you have a speaker who is very nervous, just starting out, really working on overcoming their fear of getting up on stage and speaking, you should be a little easier on that speaker. Not too much wasabi, very, maybe one little piece. Your evaluation should be more on building the person up, encouraging them, because that's what we all want. We all want to become better speakers, and we want our friends and club members to become better speakers. So when speakers are starting out, we should be encouraging. Of course, if you have an expert speaker who has many years of experience, you can focus more on ideas for wasabi to the evaluation. Of course, you still want to be positive, but in our club, you can see the difference between a seasoned speaker, somebody who's been there for many years. The evaluations often, they talk about good things, but more time is spent on how we can help people get even better. But when it's a new member, a young member just starting out, then it's important to take it a little bit easier. And please, please give us your opinion. Why do I underline the word your? Two reasons. The first is something that I already touched on, if you were in the audience, you have an opinion, and your opinion is worth as much as my opinion or his opinion or her opinion. We want to hear what you think. The second reason is that you can only speak for yourself. Sometimes an evaluator will say something like, we had difficulty following the theme of the story. You should never say something like that because you cannot speak for me. Maybe I had no difficulty understanding the story. Different people perceive things differently in a speech. And as an aside, I would add that whenever you stand up to speak to an audience, if there's 5 or 20 or 25, 50, 100 people, not every person is going to like everything you say in the same way. It's impossible. Some people will love everything you say. Some people will think, it wasn't that great. Most people, I think, will be in the middle. Yeah, there's things I like, things for improvement. That's part of the nature of public speaking. You cannot please everyone. When it comes to evaluation, again, some people may disagree with you, but that's okay. And it's good for the speaker to know your opinion. We'll talk in the second half about what do you do when you receive feedback, but when you give feedback, please give us your opinion. Tell us what you liked, of course, and suggest to them ways that they can improve. Now, very importantly is to avoid what I like to call value judgments. And what do I mean? These are when making certain assumptions about how everyone feels that are not true. I'll give you some examples. Here are some things to avoid saying. Good leaders don't do this, or the audience didn't, or you should have, or you failed to, or you should never. These are all harsh. These are all too strong. Better to say things like, I liked this, or I felt that. I think you could try something else. You can even say, I didn't understand. When you told me about X, I didn't understand. That's perfectly okay. It's important that the speaker knows that you didn't understand. Maybe somebody else understood, but you didn't. And the speaker might change his or her a little bit the next time to make sure everyone understands. You might try. There are, of course, many other phrases to avoid and many other phrases that you can use. These are just examples. But if you look at these ones, they're all related to, if I'm the evaluator, related to me. What I liked, what I felt, what I think, what I understood, what I didn't understand. Last point, and this is a very important phrase that I would like you to remember. When giving an evaluations, remember this phrase: reasons why, suggestions how. Reasons why, suggestions how. When you liked something, it's not enough to just say, oh, I really liked that story that you told. That's good. It means that you like the story, but I don't know necessarily why. It's better to say, I liked that story because it was a concrete example of the point you were trying to make. Or I liked that story because it added real emotion and I felt closer to you. Or I liked that story because whatever the reason is. So when you like something, tell the speaker why you liked it, because then I have a better understanding of what I can do with other speeches in the future. Suggestions how. If somebody is speaking quickly, it's one thing to tell them, for me, I found that it was that you were going a bit too quickly, but it's more powerful here's something I noticed that moved from one part of the stage to another, paused, and that was really nice. So maybe you could try this the next time you're transitioning from one part of the speech to another. Transition, walk to a different point on the stage. Then you've told me to pause and sound, but you've also given me how I might try it. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, but that's okay because it's, again, your suggestion, it's your idea. So very important phrase, reasons why, suggestions how. And because I am in Switzerland, Yoshiko knows that I like to keep Swiss timing. And we come to the end of this part of the presentation, and I'm going to stop my sharing right now. And we have a little time. What questions do you have for me? You can put them in the chat, or if somebody wants to raise their hand, you can ask them in English or Japanese. If they are in Japanese, I will let Yoshiko either answer them or translate for me.
It's a good opportunity to ask questions to John. Please feel free to raise your hand. If you are very shy, please write your questions or comments in the chat box.
I have a question.
Please.
Thank you.
Akumi.
Thank you. Thank you, Yoshiko-san and John. It was really interesting and very informative suggestions. And I have a question about knowing the speaker, because if I were the speaker and someone asked me like such a question such as like, what is your theme? What you're gonna talking about? I think I would talk about all the speech to them. So, you know, it will ruin the whole speech. So I don't know what kind of information should be told to the listeners, or what will be the benefit for the listeners to ask? What kind of questions should be appropriate?
What I should have, thank you for the question, Ukumi. It's a good question. I should have been, if for example, if you are giving a speech, I will talk to you privately, just you and me, not anybody else. It's just for me. So the rest of the audience knows nothing about the speech, so the surprise is not ruined. You don't have to tell me necessarily what it's about. I don't need the whole speech. I'm thinking more in terms of, is there, I would say, Ikumi, is there anything you would like me to really pay attention to? And you might say, I want to work on my pauses, or I want to work on better transitions from one part to another part. Or you might even say, there's one part of my speech where I talk about this. I'd really like to think about, did that really work with the whole speech? And so, yes, as your evaluator, I might get some information about the speech, but I don't want everything. It's really, my role is different than those in the audience. It's to really help you. So even if I know a bit about the speech, it's okay, because it means that I can do a better job for you.
Thank you so much for the confirmation, because I was thinking, you know, either it's the theme, or like, do they have to get to know me personally, or do I have to give them like some point that I was iffy about the speech, and you just confirm me like what kind of thing that I want them to pay attention. So it's really good to know. Thank you. I'm going to use that, utilize that information to my speech.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Do we have 4 questions in the chat box? Could you see that?
I see them. Yes, I see them. I'm looking now. So at the top, what features should the speeches have to achieve a higher mark on audience awareness? That's interesting, because in the second half, I'm going to talk a little bit about speech contest, and there are the features will appear in there. Whoever asked, so Yuki, will come back to that question in the second half, promise. What kind of points can evaluators care when evaluating an audience awareness field? Again, it really is the points that are important for you. Let's say that everybody notices 5 things. To take a really simple example, everybody notices 5 things about a speech. But in your evaluation, you only talk about 3, and these 2 you don't. That's what's most important for you. So it doesn't necessarily mean, when I hear other evaluations, sometimes they say things I never thought of, and I think that's great. And sometimes they don't say things that I would have said, but that's okay as well. It's always interesting. Mika says, how do you memorize the speech when evaluating? Any tips? First tip, don't try to memorize the speech. It's okay if you don't. When I talk about contests, I will show you the form that I have used for me that I find it's very simple and I find it's very helpful. You can, of course, take up notes. There's no rule that says you have to do it without notes. In fact, I often have notes when I do an evaluation because it's not about me giving a speech. It's about me trying to help the speaker. So if I need the notes, it's okay. I wouldn't try to memorize the speech. Damia asks, how do you manage time when you give an evaluation? So an evaluation, you don't have a lot of time. It's funny. I mean, I've done so many evaluations over the years, and because of the contest that I did, you have to know exactly when 3 minutes in 30 seconds is going to be. And over the years, I've just developed this ability to I have a good sense. I can usually end an evaluation in 3 minutes or 20 seconds. But it just comes with practice. Obviously, you have the cards. You get a green card at 2 minutes, a yellow card at 2.5, and a red card at 3, I believe. Or yes, something like that. So that will guide you. But again, it's just practice. And this is why contests are a really good way to practice evaluations, because it forces you to be really concise. I don't know how to say concise in Japanese, but it's a good word in English. To be really straightforward, say the point, but don't go on and on and on. Really to the point. Noriko says, when we have a small talk with the speaker before the meeting, is it okay to give some advice before the speech as an evaluator? Sure, absolutely. Why, if the speaker, especially if the speaker says, I don't know how to do this, and you have an idea, you can tell the person, why don't you try this? Because, and this is a really important point, and I'm going to use this time because I don't want to forget it. I think this is critical for all aspects of Toastmasters. Think of Toastmasters as a place where you are not perfect. It's a laboratory. You can experiment. You can try different things. And if something doesn't work, it's okay. The point of Toastmasters is not to be a great Toastmaster speaker. The point of Toastmasters is to learn skills that you can use in the real world. So, I'll give you one quick example of how you can use Toastmasters as a laboratory. Years ago, there was a man in our club, a really nice guy named Bjorn, very good speaker, German. He moved away up to Basel. I watched him give a speech one meeting, and it was a great speech, but the whole speech, he was pacing back and forth on the stage. He was like a tiger in the cage. I was not his evaluator, but he asked me my feedback, and I said, it was a great speech, but you've got to learn to stand still from time to time. So this is what I want you to do for your next speech. For your next speech, come to the middle, stand, and for 7 minutes, don't move. Don't take a step. Just stand there for 7 minutes. People will tell you you should have moved. That's okay. You need to feel what it's like to stand still. And a month later, I was there and he did the speech. And he stood still, and I could tell he wanted to move, but he didn't. And after, he said, now I understand. And from that point, he would stand and talk, and then he would move a bit, and then he would stand. So this is how you need to use Toastmasters, like a laboratory. Yoshiko, there are more questions, but I want to come back to you for time.
Right. You have one moment for the last question. And for the rest, how about, could you mind give the written answer, and then I will pass this to the Toastmasters bulletin board.
Sure, I could try. Yes, I could try. I can do that too. I'll take one question. So Makoto asked, could you tell us what sushi style is concisely? Yes. You watch a speech, there's many things to pick. Just pick a few. Again, harahachi bu, not too much. Focus on them well. Maybe 3 things you liked, 3 things for improvement. For example, you want to present it elegantly, positively, the way sushi is presented, it's always beautiful. And you want, the wasabi is a metaphor for giving the feedback. You have to be able to tell people, this didn't work for me. And for some people, it might be hard. It might be a little hot, like wasabi, but you need to add a little bit if we're going to improve. So that is really, it was just, I was looking for a good cultural metaphor. If you were all in Italians, I would have probably used spaghetti and found a way to make spaghetti work as well. It just comes down really to being honest and positive.
Thank
Yoshiko,
you very,
I passed.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. It can go on and on and on, but let's put John's advice in practice. Now we are going to have the first target speech. The speaker will be Kazumi Watanabe of Naniwa Toastmasters Club. There are more than nearly 130 people. Kazumi, could you raise your big hand to show us where you are? Do you see Kazumi? Wonderful. Then the Kazumi is going to deliver a speech for 5 minutes. Then what you are going to do, where after her speech, we are going to put you in a small meeting room, breakout session. Then in the breakout session, you have 10 minutes to evaluate Kazumi's speech using the tips which just John shared with us. Her title of her speech is His Bad Habit. Kazumi Watanabe, His Bad Habit. His Bad Habit, Kazumi Watanabe. Please.
I can't stand it anymore. My husband's bad habit of accumulating junk. I finally decided to clean it without letting him know. Hello, fellow Toastmasters, and welcome on the guest. How refreshing! I threw things out one after another into huge plastic bags. If he gets angry at me, I'll leave him. In the middle of the cleaning, however, I found, what's that? A cute envelope with flower patterns. Dear Mr. Watanabe, thank you very much for everything the other day. I really had a great time with you. No way! A couple of days later, I happened to see a website with 3 checkpoints when your husband starts to think about divorce. Number 1, are you a good cook? No. I've been cutting corners in cooking for many years. But that led him to become a good cook. Number 2, are you a good listener? No, I usually just talk to him. But he seems to have been enjoying listening to me with a good smile for a long time. Number 3, do you appreciate him? Uh-oh. The sender of the letter showed her appreciation to him clearly. I felt like reading the rest of the letter. And I found the name of the sender at the end of the lines. It was my name. It was my thank you letter to him just after, the Japanese engagement ceremony many years ago. and it concluded, I have a lot of flaws, but I try to do my best to take care of you, Kazumi. How kind I was before marriage. I should appreciate him. He's the one who's never ever complained about my long talk, not being a good cook, and especially the number of times I used him as a speech materials at Toastmasters. I've taken his good points for granted and just focus on his downside. Come to think of it, his things don't look like a heap of junk, but his antique collection. In the first place, without his bad habit, he wouldn't have left a letter, and I couldn't have realized I didn't appreciate him. I've long thought of his bad habit as a problem, but the real problem was my assumption. So the solution is to change my viewpoint and to become cooperative. Honey, your nice collection would be much nicer if it were organized. Is there anything I could do for you? Oh, thank you, Kazumi. By the way, you have no longer 2 lines. 2 lines between your eyebrows. I lost my 2 lines, and he said I gained a better relationship with him. We worked together to organize his collection. So everyone, if you are frustrated by someone's attitude, please remember, seeing things from a different point of view works. That can help you recognize the other person's good points, and then you can change your situation for the better. Since then, I take this letter as a good reminder of his good point. Toastmaster Yoshiko Kurisaki, back to you.
Thank you so much. Now, everyone, it's your time to do the exercise. Now we are going to put you in a small meeting room, breakout session. You'll be 3 to, depending on the room, 3 to 4, 5 people. And could you evaluate the Kazumi's speech? John, do you have a few words before we move into the breakout session?
Excellent speech.
Thank you.
Really, really great. Loved it. And I laughed 4 times. So it was great. And I look forward to what people think. Your speech reminded me of a question that Robert asked. He said, can you give any tips on evaluating a perfect speech? Well, there's no such thing as a perfect speech, but it's always harder to evaluate a good speech. So I'm curious to see what people are going to say about your speech.
Thank you very much.
Right. So it's going to be everyone's challenge, your challenge.
One thing I would suggest before we move, when you're in the sessions, instead of one person doing it and the other, just for time, it might be simpler if you just discussed. Pick a point and then you can all discuss it, then pick another point. It just might be more efficient.
Right. Thank you. True. So you're going to have 10, right. You are going to have 10 minutes for evaluation. Enjoy the session.
I'll give a few observations from our group, and then we can open it for discussion. And also, people can, in the chat, they can type comments for Kazumi. And Kazumi, at the end, there is a way for everybody who wants to copy. If you go into the chat, there are 3 little dots, and you can, file, you can save the comments, Kazumi. That way you have them in writing, which would be great. But in our group, we loved it. We loved the energy and the eye contact and playing with the computer and the gestures. Storytelling was great. willingness to be a little vulnerable. Do you understand vulnerable? Yourself. That's a very, very nice thing. Yumiko-san in our group, she had a good point, and she said that she liked how you took an ordinary subject, something very simple, and you made it into an important lesson for everyone. So we thought that was really quite good. I'd be interested, other groups, what were some of the things very quickly that you discussed? Yoshiko?
Right, could you share the points you discussed in the group?
Yes, please share with any points,
Yes.
and you can
Okay.
type.
Watari-san, please.
Sure.
Okay.
First of all, John, nice to meet you again online.
Yoko,
Yeah.
good to see you.
In addition to what you have already mentioned, we really liked the message, which was clear, and the structure of the speech itself, and the humor that was involved. Some of the improvements that our group found, and I will speak personally, that there could be some improvement in the eye level because the camera was coming from the top, a little slightly up, and the lighting was a little bit dark. That's a technical improvement. And from the members of a group, they wanted to hear, some of us wanted to hear more of the dialogue between the husband and the wife because it was really the part that enlightened the story itself. And also some of the members wanted to know one or two tips to change the perspective which was a very important message of the story. And also it was a very positive energy we felt through the story. And also we wanted to see some of the contrast where you were shocked by the letter. And I think your facial expression was great. But we wanted to see a little bit more of contrast. Sorry I used we, but some of us felt so.
Okay.
Thank you. Back to you, John.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Yoko.
And you're free to write your comments in the chat
Anybody
box.
else want to share their comments?
Yes,
Nobs.
No, oh, thank you very much for wonderful. We are the group of 4 people, Adachi and Makoto and Kambara and Nishiguchi. We all admired the way Kazuo Watanabe, a good performance, and she knew how to use online speech presentation. She has done very well. And we don't have so many points we would like to ask her to improve, but she opened up her story about his husband bad habit correction or something, and also she included dialogue or questionnaire. And she, at the conclusion part, she mentioned about the other side of marriage, the different point of view. In such a beautiful logical flow, logical sequence, our member mentioned about we would like to listen to the other side of your marriage, your husband's comment, how he has been feeling about you, and you realize appreciation and a different point of view, and your 2 lines disappeared. That was a wonderful, beautiful story. Thank you very much for a wonderful speech. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much. That was very nice. One thing in our group, and this is really interesting because I asked you remember at the end of the dialogue between and her husband says, "Oh, you don't have 2 lines." And what could that mean? Well, everyone knew what you meant. It means that you weren't frowning and angry, that you weren't like this. But it's interesting because for a second I thought, I didn't understand. At first I thought you were talking about your eyebrows, but I said, that can't be right. And it's a great example. And there's nothing wrong that you said, but it's an example that sometimes in the audience, some people know exactly what you mean and other people might not know. So it's just to be aware of. Could even play. My husband said 2 lines and I thought, what 2 lines? He says, you're not like this. And then we would see, but it's a very small thing. What about some other groups? Oh, here's a comment coming up. Good opening, which caught my attention. Besides, it connects to the conclusion. Yes, connecting to the conclusion is very good. Coming back to the letter. She knew how she looked in the online setting. The suggestion is when expressing her conversation with her husband, she can use a lower tone. A concrete example how was showed in the breakout session. We weren't in a breakout. That's very good feedback, Mika. Thank you. Anybody else? Any other groups? Yeah, Taka, yes.
Hi. So Kazumi-san, thank you very much for your great speech. It was so amazing. And many of you pointed out all great points already. So we would like to share some improvement points we got from our group members. Okay. One of them is why don't you include a little bit more audience engagement at the beginning? For example, how many of you have felt the same way? You know, if you put the little small line, maybe we can connect more and we can, you know, feel like we are in your shoes. And one more thing is your gestures and action was really good, but some of us felt it was a little bit overwhelming. So it's kind of hard to follow your message. So we just watched like your actress. We really wanted to focusing on your message because your message is so great and your words to tell everybody. So and personally, my opinion is I wanted to have a little bit more pause before you get to the point, so you can emphasize your message more. But overall, your speech was great and amazing, and really, really enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think Taka raises 3 really good points that it's worth just emphasizing. The point about engagement, about connecting with us, always remember every speech is it's not about you. It's never about you. It's about us. It's about the audience. So even when you're telling a very personal story about a relationship with someone in your family, you have to ask yourself, why should the audience care? And there's a clear reason we should care. And you said, but I agree, you could even put a little more into the message for us, which would be very good. And again, on the waving around, this is where Toastmasters, and I've said this to a lot of people, and I've been a member of Toastmasters since 2007, so 13 years. So I love the organization, but it can be very theatrical. It can be very theater-like. And that's okay. Try to see how it feels, but just remember that in the real world, many times the Toastmaster style will not work. If you try to do all this in the real world, people will look at you like you're from another planet. So keep that in mind.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Well, I'm sure every one of us learned a lot. With this note, I want to put the part 1 of the session to the end. We are going to take 5 minutes break from now. Could you come back? It's 21:12. So why don't we start at 9:20? We'll start again 9:20. See you later.
The language speech in a language I don't speak makes me focus on other things. Exactly what you said, the tone, the content, pace, what you feel. So my advice, the fact that you can't see it, then don't even think about that aspect. And what it means is that your focus it'll be narrower, but it'll be deeper. And
Wow.
you can then use that to help people based on because your perception, one sense is taken away,
Right.
other senses are heightened.
Yes.
So clearly, I mean, it's you know, I'm sorry that you are blind, but at the same time, if that's the case, your hearing is going to be much more acute, your other much
Yes.
more acute, and you can bear and have a positive contribution for every speaker you hear.
Love that, John. Yes, I already feel very empowered now. Thank you so much for those comments. Loved it.
My pleasure.
Thank you, sir.
Now, are you ready to start the second part of the workshop? You had a good
Yes.
break. It's short, but it's good in the middle of the Zoom. Right, so John, I pass the floor to you.
Thank you, Yoshiko. I'm going to continue on. Now we don't have, the second half is shorter. So the next part, I will try and keep the comments concise. And we should again see a black screen. I want to say a few words about giving difficult feedback. And this is less for Toastmasters because we've talked a lot about how you should be positive and encouraging. But in the real world, in our companies, our organizations, we sometimes have to give difficult feedback. And it's not easy. When I manage different people, I never liked giving difficult feedback, but it's very important. It's for the same reasons really in Toastmasters. It helps people improve because quite often people wrong. So a couple of thoughts on difficult feedback. You want to be really clear on the process at the outset. And what I mean is when you start to give the feedback, you know, when you speak with the person, be really clear about what you're going to talk about, why you're going to talk about it, and then how you can move forward. I think when everybody goes into that kind of a session with that attitude, then even difficult feedback becomes a lot easier to deliver and a lot easier to receive. And I do think that leaders of companies, leaders of teams should very early on in the relationship explain that how the feedback process is going to work, not just every week, but you know, for the next months, years, however long. Because when everybody understands this is a place where feedback will be given, then the process becomes everybody engages more with the process. React quickly. This is in terms of when there is something that is a mistake is made or there is a real problem. It might be team dynamics. There might be a conflict on the team. There might be something that's not working. I have been in situations both in the private sector and in government at the United Nations organization. And I have seen situations, and I think some of you probably have seen the same thing, where you know there's a problem, but the person in charge doesn't do anything, lets the problem go, and then what was a small problem is now a much bigger problem and a much harder thing to deal with. So when there is an issue, the quicker that you can react to it, the better. At the same time, wait for a problem to arise to be giving feedback. You want to be regular with the feedback. For those of you who drive, if you've ever been driving on the auto route and straight, you don't hold the wheel car perfectly rigid and still. You're always slightly adjusting. If you next time you drive, you'll notice the wheel is always moving just a little bit. You're always keeping it back. And I think this is how feedback should be in practice within a company or organization. It should be ongoing. It should be flowing. And of course, feedback can flow up as well as down. And I think the best leaders are the ones who encourage the people working for them to give the leader himself or herself feedback. A very important phrase that I really strongly believe in: correct in private, praise in public. Because feedback is not necessarily always going to be difficult. When it's difficult, when there's a problem, you should speak to the person privately. It's not proper to talk about something very difficult in public. But at the same time, I do believe that when somebody has done a good job, yes, of course, you can speak to them privately. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think it's nice at a team meeting, at an event, to acknowledge a great job done. What that do? It gives the person recognition, it gives the person motivation, it gives the person the kinds of things we discussed in the first half of this workshop, the things that we want to share at a Toastmasters meeting. And like I said, be open to feedback yourself. You want to be willing to receive feedback as a leader. So remember that none of us, every one of us can use feedback. Now, when it comes to feedback, and this is both, but also back into the Toastmasters scenario, speeches. So you into the feedback, what do you do with it? If you've ever participated in a speech contest, and I know some of you have, and you advance to the next level, you will get feedback from all kinds of people. And sometimes the feedback is different. One person says, "Oh, I loved when you did this." And somebody else will say, "I didn't like it that much." Now you have two different pieces. You do. Here's my approach to receiving feedback. It's a very simple process to follow. Listen. First of all, listen with an open mind. And while you're listening, tell yourself at the beginning, everything I hear is true. Don't judge it. Don't react to it. Take it in. Assume that everything you hear is true. Be very open-minded. Write it down. Accept that it's true. Then, the next day, think about it. Think about each piece of feedback you got. Leave a little time. Think about it. Does that work for me? Does that make sense? Because to accept every piece of feedback that you get. You may not agree. Ultimately, it's your speech. So think about it. Accept it first, let it sit, and then think about it. And ultimately, you have to choose. You have to decide, if I get all this feedback, am I going to accept all of it? Am I going to accept none of it? Or am I going to accept some of it? It's up to you to decide. So really, that's the simplest approach when it comes to feedback. Take it all in, think about it, and then decide what you are going to do with it. Now, for those of you who are really keen on feedback, especially in your work, I encourage you to be pro. A lot of people that I work with, a lot of people from the West, North America, Europe, I ask them, I say, do you ever get feedback on your speeches or presentations at work? And some, yes, some say no. And I almost always hear, really good, and that's it. And that doesn't do anything. There was a comment earlier, I can't remember who said it in the chat. What do you do with feedback that's just all praiseworthy? It's not really useful. It's often the case because people, your colleagues, are shy about giving you real feedback. Most of them won't be Toastmasters, so they're not in that frame of mind that we are in. What you can do is be proactive. So, for example, if I'm giving a presentation on Friday and I know that Taka and Jai and Kazumi are going to be there, I might go to them and say, listen, I'm really trying to work on whatever. I pick a subject. I'm trying to work on this part of speaking. I would really appreciate it if you would look out for this and give me feedback how I did. In my experience, your colleagues are going to be much more willing to give you feedback because you've been proactive. You have given them permission to give you feedback. They won't feel about it. This is a really simple thing. If you want to become a better speaker, be proactive with feedback. Now, very quickly, I said I'd talk about evaluation contests, and I'm mindful of the time. This is the criteria. This relates to a question we had earlier about what are things that people should look out for. In an evaluation contest, this is what is on the judge's ballot. Out of 100%, this is a contest where there's one target speaker and 5 or 6 different evaluations. So the judging is not of the speech, it's of the evaluations. So what happens is that the judges will look 40% how analytical the speech was. What is the quality of the analysis? Was it clear? Was it focused? 30% is devoted to recommendations. Are they positive? Are they specific? Are they 15% is on your technique. Are you sympathetic? Are you being encouraging, motivational, sensitive? And then finally, 15 points for your summation, for closing, to summarize all of the points. So as you see, 70% of the criteria is based on analysis, both what worked well, is it clear, and how you can help them with recommendations. The rest is be very nice, be supportive, like we've discussed, and have a good conclusion. And I don't know how often you have evaluation contests in Japan, but if you have a chance to do it, it's a way to participate, work on your evaluations. When it comes to taking notes, and this also relates to something that one of the questions, I have a very simple sheet that I designed. You can find all kinds of templates on the internet, but many of them are complicated. I just have pro, what I liked, and con, things for improvement. And here are the things I look out for: the opening, the content, the body, the closing, body language, voice, and something I call stickiness. How sticky is the speech? Am I going to remember this? And I base this on a book that I read called Made to Stick. Fantastic book, New York Times bestseller. We could do a whole workshop just on this book. Unfortunately, we don't have time. 2 American brothers, Chip and Dan Heath. They wanted to know why some ideas we can remember for a long time and others we forget. And the good news is this is it's been an audio book and it's been translated into many languages, including Japanese. So it is there in Japanese. I encourage you to pick it up. You'll get it. You'll get a copy of the PowerPoint, but it's a fantastic book. And what they say is that sticky messages leave clues, and they come up with what they call the success model. There are 6 characteristics: messages that are simple, unexpected, concrete, credible, emotional, and often stories. And if we think of Kazumi's speech, it was very simple. There's an unexpected element that she found, the letter was from her. It was her story. It was very, she's credible. There was emotion, and it was a story. She had very sticky elements in her speech. So it's a great example. So I encourage you to look at that. Then, as I listen to a speech, I just start writing down different points. The opening was good, or maybe it could have been better, points this, that. And then, again, sushi style, I just choose. I can't talk about everything, so I pick. Be unique, focus on content and delivery. And I was having a discussion in the break, for those of you who missed it, with Jai, and he's saying because he's blind, he can't see people moving about. And I said, then what means you focus on less, but you go deeper and just listen to the speech, the content, the delivery, the voice. You can focus on different things, as we're going to see in a moment when we have our next target speaker. You want to be concise. And when I say commit, I mean, sometimes I see a speaker say, you know, I think you should do this, but of course, that's just my viewpoints. Others may not agree, and this may be like that. If you think they should do something, commit. This is your opinion. And remember what I said at the beginning, your opinion has value. It is as worthwhile as any other opinion. Be careful of your time, 3.5. You have to practice and forget the summary. Now, how to improve? And ask this question, in the break and in writing. The last thing I want to say is to share with you a few ideas of how you can improve. One is you can study different speech analyses. I think you have a link already to my blog, my website. I've been writing it for about 12 years now, mannerofspeaking.org. Here's the homepage. That's me struggling to come up with a word in Japanese for manner of speaking. No. If you go to the top there where the arrow is, you will, it says analysis of speeches. And I've analyzed about 40 or more speeches, politicians, TED Talks, speeches in movies, and there's a lot in there that can help you think about things to look for in a speech and things to look for in your own speeches. Second way, another way is to have an evaluation meeting. And I've done this before, and they're a lot of fun and they're very educational. What you do, you take out table topics, grammarian, counter, voting, all of that, just gone, general evaluator, just take it all out. And instead you have a short educational, 3 speeches, and then 3 group evaluations. Here's an example of how it would work in a 2-hour meeting. First 5 minutes, somebody introduces the way the meeting's going to go. Then you have a 20-minute educational on evaluations. Then you have speech number 1. And I allow 10 minutes because 7-minute speech, but there's an introduction and there's time to get up. So you budget 10 minutes. You have your first speech, and then you have a 15-minute group evaluation, just like we were doing with Kazumi's speech. You have the moderator is going to moderate the value, but you go around the room and people can discuss, and you really can go deep on the speech. And then you get a sense of what everybody's thinking. It's great for the speaker. It's great for the whole club because everybody gets to contribute. You can have a break, a little bit of sushi, sake maybe, I don't know. And then speech number 2, group evaluation. Speech number 3, group evaluation, closing. You can pack it in 2 hours. You can do a lot. Another option is to have a contest meeting. You can get video world championships. We did this once. We went back several years. People hadn't seen any of the speeches. We played all the different contest speeches from the world championships, and we had everybody vote. And then we compared how we would have ranked the speakers with how the judges actually did rank them. And that's another way that you can be creative about getting people to evaluate and to judge and to think about a speech. And then the last thing I say before handing it back to Yoshiko is you just have to do it. You want to get in, just get up on your feet as often as you can. Are you going to make mistakes? Yes, you are going to make mistakes, but nanakaro yaoki, right? Fall down 7 times, get up 8. You keep just doing it. So with that, I wish you all gambate kudasai. I hope I've written that correctly.
Well done.
You can do it.
Well
Back
done.
to you, Yoshiko.
Thank you, John. Now it's time for us to gambaru. Let's practice what we just learned. The second target speaker will be Masae Yamada. She's going to deliver a speech in Japanese. I know that there are so many non-Japanese speakers among us, but please listen to the Japanese speech. And John, could you tell the non-Japanese speakers what to look at?
Yes. So for those of us who don't speak Japanese, all we can look at Masake's body language, eye contact. We can listen to the tone of her voice. We can listen for pauses. We probably can't listen for much else, but we can narrow our focus. And what's going to happen is we will all be broken out into breakout rooms. But if you don't speak Japanese, please main room. And then all of the non-native speakers, we will discuss it. I have a summary of what Masake's speech is about, Masai's speech is about, and then I will tell you very shortly. But I don't want to say it before.
Right, exactly. Thank you. Then Masai is going to deliver a speech for 5 minutes. Then after her speech, you'll be put in a breakout session like before. But for non-Japanese speakers, could you kindly come back, leave the room to come back to the main room so that you're going to have a session with John. With this note, I introduce you Masae Yamada. She's from Tokai Toastmasters Club. The title is Hako kara deta musume, a girl who has decided to jump out of the box. For those who may not understand Japanese, the title and the summary of her speech is put in the chat box. So I hope it will help you to understand her speech. Yamada Masae-san, 箱から出た娘。箱から出た娘。山田正恵さんです。お願いします。
予定より1ヶ月も早くに長女として生まれた私を母は暖かくて過ごしやすい箱に入れて大切に育ててくれました。そう、私は箱入り娘でした。私はいつしかその箱から出てはいろいろなことに挑戦して試験に通って歯科医師になりました。トーストマスターズの皆さん、こんばんは。私、歯医者なんです。歯科医師です。歯科医者じゃありません。歯科医師です。親知らずの抜歯とインプラントの相談については有料になりますので、スピーチ終了後に振り込み先をお伝えします。では、歯医者になったばかりの頃に時を戻そう。大学病院で初めて担当した患者さんが治療の終わりに私にこう言いました。先生ありがとう。その言葉が嬉しくて、もっと腕を磨きたい。そう思って大きな歯医者さんに勤めることにしました。そこで私を待っていたのは鬼軍曹。腕はいいけど、とても怖い先生でした。先生は何かあると私を呼んで、山田先生、ちょっと。山田先生の説明じゃ、患者さん全然納得しないよ。山田先生、どうして俺と同じようにやらないの？俺が山田先生と同じぐらいの時、もっとうまかったけど、と言われ続けて、その後、簡単な処置ですら、手が震えてできなくなりました。私には価値がない。私には能力がない。価値がないからどこにも行けないし、能力がないからどこに行ったって。がっくりうなだれて家に帰り、思い出すだけで体が震えて眠れない日が続きました。まあいいか。まあいいか。どうせできっこない。という名前の箱に私は入ってしまいました。本当はそんな箱、出たくて出たくて出たくて出たくて仕方ないのに、箱の中の世界が私のすべてになってしまいました。ちょうどその頃、母が習い始めたクロールを畳の上で練習しているのを見ました。 何してるのと言った私に、母はこう言いました。誰でも最初から何でも上手にはできないのよ。だから練習しているの。母を見て気づきました。母はできない自分を認めて努力してる。私、たった一人の評価で自分の可能性を潰してる。皆さんもそういうことありますよね。まあいいか。どうせできっこないっていう箱、入っていますよね。箱入り娘、箱入り息子になっていますよね。英語、うまくなりたい。でもなんとなく通じてるから、まあいいか。論評、うまくなりたい。でも連休はやっぱり休みたいし、まあいいか。J ポーズ、時々死になっちゃうけど、まあいいか。私はこのまま、まあいいかの箱には入っていたくない。だったら出ないと。もう一度、この箱に入らないために、自分に3つ約束をしました。1つ、今の職場で惜しまれて辞めるぐらい、歯を食いしばって頑張る。歯医者だけに。2つ、わからないことはきちんと咀嚼する。3つ、もう、まあ一家の箱に入らない。その後、思い切って環境を変えました。今、自分の可能性を信じて進んでいます。予定より1ヶ月も早くに、少女として生まれた私を、母は暖かくて過ごしやすい箱に入れて、大切に育ててくれました。私はいつしかその箱から出て、まあ一家の箱に入ってしまいました。誰もが入ってしまう、まあ一家の箱。でも、その箱から出て見た景色は、出ることの大変さを忘れてしまうぐらい素晴らしかったです。皆さんも、まあ一家の箱から出て、新しい世界を見てみませんか。トーストマスター。
ありがとうございました。では皆さん、これから、
I'm very sad that I can't speak. I was going to say I'm very sad that I cannot speak Japanese.
Right. Now we are going to be split into a breakout room, and you're going to have 10 minutes to talk about Masai's speech according to the point made by John. For non-Japanese speakers, you'll be put in a breakout room first. Then could you come back to the main room as soon as possible? Then John is going to give you some training to evaluate the speech without language. That is something. So you have 10 minutes. Enjoy.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hello
Did you have
again.
good discussions?
Yes, of course.
Yes. Wonderful. Yes. I see many smiling face. But I want to have one or two of you to share the points you made for Masai-san. And also, could you also type in the discussion points which you remember in the chat box? That it will help Masai-san to further improve her speech. Her speech was already great, but there are always things to learn. Right. So could you type your thoughts, and at the same time, if I appreciate if someone of you raise a hand to share what you discussed in room or your thoughts.
Can I? This is Makoto Iwara.
Thank you. Iba-san, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Jameson. We discussed for your speeches. I'd like to mention 2 great points. First one, structure and stream. Introduction, body, conclusion. These are very clear, especially your message. 箱から出てみませんか? It's quite clear and wonderful. So structure and stream was great. And your humor was so wonderful. You use your occupation many times as a tip of humor. So it was wonderful. But at the same time, especially I thought you mentioned situation you are in the box. I wanted to know concretely as a dentist, you are in the box. What is the situation you are in the box? 箱の中にいる状況 concretely. That's all. But it's a great speech. Thank you very much. That's all.
Thank you very much. Very straightforward. Thank you. I would take one more person to share your comments. Do you want to try? John said, if you speak more, you'll be better. Even better. Hi. Miyako-san, please.
Okay, hi. Thank you very much. In our group, we thought she did very well to express her negative and positive feelings, you know, very distinct, so that we could really see her emotions clearly. Also, she was really excellent at using her camera or the space, how do you say, you know, this image. Like she could use forward, backward, sideways, using crawl, showing the crawl and everything. So very, very effective. And also what she went through emotionally was every single person can relate to, you know, like we have struggles to get out of the box, you know, in our feelings. So she was really good. And one thing we discussed about her improvement was from the last point, she had the baby box and oh, well, I can do it anyway, box. And well, it's okay, box. And then the last box was how wonderful to get out of the box. So from the, oh, that's okay box to the last box, if she could have explained a little more, so that, you know, it was kind of jumped from that. So if she could have the concrete examples, how she got out of it. She showed 3 points promises, but in addition to that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good comment. Right. So I said with this intervention, I pass the floor to John for final question and answers, and any other comments for the workshop in general.
If anybody has any final last question, I'm happy to take it. I really appreciate so many people staying. I know it's very late in Japan. It's mid-afternoon in Geneva. If not,
may I say?
Oh, yes, sorry. Yes, I saw somebody wait.
My name is Masayo.
Hi, Masaya, please.
Thank you very much for your workshop. I have learned quite a lot. Thank you. One question. I, put my question at the chat box. Whenever I have to evaluate one of the members' speeches, I always wonder, how should I address the speaker? Thank you very much for your speech. It was a wonderful speech. Then, should I continue to say you, or, addressing the audience, including the speaker, should I say her speech was wonderful? So could you give me your example related to how to address the speaker during the evaluation speech?
Arigato, Masayo, for the question. It's a very good question. I do both. I will sometimes look directly at the speaker and say you, speaking to him or her, but most of the time I will speak to the whole audience because the evaluation is also for everyone. So I might say something like, and did you notice how Masayo-san, she did this, that really, for me, that it really explained what she was doing. Or, you know, when Masayo-san moved across the room, then she connected with the other part of the audience. So I do both. And then a little bit directly to the speaker, but usually I speak to everyone. And of course, the speaker knows that the feedback is coming for him or her. So I think it's fine. Does that help? Have I been clear?
Are there other questions? Right. Then at the very beginning.
I have a question. Is it okay? A very short one. Is it all right or proper to ask the speaker to send me an evaluator a draft? It can be a very rough draft, but do you think it is proper to do so, or are we supposed to listen to the speech for the first time at the presentation?
That's an interesting question, Kuriko, because I don't know of anybody. I know in contests, coaches will get the draft of the speech before. But for club meetings, I've never heard of anybody asking for it. And I don't see why you could not. I think it will color the evaluation because you will be expecting certain things, but you can then also see how the structure is. You can know more about the speech. So again, Toastmasters is a laboratory, so why not try it and see if it works?
Okay, so it's okay to ask, but if a certain speaker does not send me a draft, that's okay too.
That's okay. That's perfectly fine.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Right. Thank you so much for a long time. At the very end, may I ask every one of you to one sentence of your takeaway today? What did you learn? What would you take away from the workshop today? Could you type it? Only one sentence is perfectly all right, but I want you to share the lessons you learned today. So I spare 1 minute. I see many of you typing. I really appreciate that. Right. I think most of you, yes, you already done. Thank you so much. So I give floor to Ohashi-san for final remark and closing.
All right. Well, thank you very much, John.
どうもありがとうございました。
Oh, thank you very much. Your wonderful, precious workshop. Well, that was very fabulous. So we do evaluate to motivate, and well, the feedback cycle and well, like a feedback in your club that will inspire your members, not just for speakers, but also well, everyone in your club. So John mentioned about success model. Personally, I took the takeaway: simple, unexpected, concrete, credible, emotional, and stories. Wow, that's amazing. So, well, there are many angles that we need to figure out, observe, and the strengths and room for improvement. Well, structure, how we can demonstrate, how we can crystal clear message, how do you engage with your vocal variety. So there are lots of angle we need to see but we will prioritize and try to figure out and see people what is the best solution, what is the best recommendation for him or her. So that kind of steps and that kind of evaluation process is crucial. So, well, as John proposed, and well, in your evaluation, in your meeting, we have a speech and group evaluation for 15 minutes, and break and speech, and group evaluation and speech, and group evaluation. So, well, this kind of, well, enhancement in order to have a mutual consensus and, well, maximize the way we do evaluation in your daily meeting in your club. So, well, we have lots of hints and takeaways and recommendation from perfect European winner. Wow! So we are connecting online and we can communicate much better from yesterday. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have a nice recipe and nice, well, tool, and try to implement your club and try to engage with your members with John's excellent, well, expertise and recommendation. And let's enjoy the process of feedback and evaluation together. So evaluation is not just a speech and good process for everyone, for you. So ladies and gentlemen, well, once again, say thank you to John. And we are looking forward to have a next time, possibly. And we are very honored to have a wonderful, well, lecturer, wonderful workshop, John, to our District 76.
Right. And also, I want to thank to Masae and Kazumi for wonderful target speeches.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. And now I would like to adjourn successfully John Zimmer's workshop. Thank you very much and good night.
Thank you very much, John. My dream has come true.